Alright, let's understand exactly what the request and response objects are. Now, if you've never seen this before, this is what we call a callback. And the callback simply is a function that is going to be executed by Node.js once this createServer function is done doing what it's doing. Okay, so let's just say the createServer function takes 2 seconds to finish creating the server. After 2 seconds, it's going to execute this function that we passed in as a parameter into the createServer function. Okay, so when it's executing that function, it's going to give us the request and response objects, and we can do whatever we want in this callback. So the first thing we are doing right here is calling request.url. And like we said, the request object is an object created by Node.js depending on exactly what kind of request the browser made to our server. Okay, so in this case, request.url is going to give us a specific URL that the browser is requesting for from our server. So right here, I'm just going to execute nodeindex.js. And remember, once this server receives a request, then it's going to log request.url right here, and then it's going to respond with hello node.js, right? So I'm going to open up my terminal right here, and then in the browser, I'm going to make a request to that endpoint. So now we have hello node.js, but if we come back to our terminal, you can see we have a slash right here. And this slash is because we made a request to the home URL. So if we make a request to something else, so localhost 3000 / something, you can see we have exactly the same response. But if we come here, you can see we have / something. And the reason why we have exactly the same response is because our server is handling all of the requests in exactly the same way. So we create the server and then we say for all requests from the browser, response.end with hello node.js. And that's why we have exactly the same response. So what if we did something like about and hit enter? You can see that in our terminal, we have about. Okay, so the request object right here contains data from the browser, and then the response gives us what we need to respond to the browser. Okay, so the next thing I want us to talk about is, for example, status codes. Let me just open up my index right here, and then I'm going to go to my network and refresh this page. And if you check out the about right here, you can see that if we check out the headers, you can see the status is 200. And the 200 status code means the request was successful and our server responded with a successful response. Okay, so that's how the browser and the server communicate. So what if we wanted to respond with a 404, meaning that the page was not found? Let's come back to our app, and what we are going to do here is we are going to say response.writeHead, and we are going to write head, and the first parameter that this writeHead function takes in is the status. And remember, look at this. Our browser has headers right here containing the response and the request and all of that. So if we wanted to write to this head of the request, then we use the writeHead function. So we are going to say response.writeHead 404, which means that the browser is going to receive a 404 response from our server, and then it's going to receive this text content. Okay, so if we come back right now, we have to stop our server and then start it again so that it has the latest changes. So after starting it again, if we come back and make a request and refresh, you can see that we have exactly the same thing right here as the content. But if you check out now, you can see that our status code is 404 not found, right? That's awesome. So this does not make any sense until we actually have different responses for different request URLs. So what we are going to do is we're going to say if, an if statement like this. So this is basically already creating a website. So we're going to say if request.url is equal to /about, then we're going to say response.end, and we're going to say the about page. Okay, and let me just return right here so that it stops the execution of that function. And we're going to say else if request.url is equal to the contact, then we're going to say return response.end, and we're going to end with the contact page. Okay, so why don't we have another else if for another page, and we're going to say else if the request.url is equal to the home page, which is the slash like this, then we're going to return response.end the home page. Okay, now we're going to have an else, and we're saying if none of these is the request that the browser made, then we are going to say response.writeHead 404, which means we set the status code to 404, and then we end with this page was not found, like that. Okay, so our server is listening to requests. When a request comes in from the browser, it checks if the request URL is about. If it is, then it's going to return response.n, the about page, to the browser. So this is the contents that the user is going to see. So if the request is /contact, it's going to return response.end. It's going to return response.end, and the content is going to be the contact page, and that's what the user is going to see. Else, if the request URL is the home, then it's going to return the home page as the content. And if none of this was a request from the user, then we are going to say write 404 status code to the response head, and then respond with the page was not found. Okay, so let's come back and try this out. If I refresh right now, you can see there's no change. Yes, and that's because we have to stop our server and start it again for the latest changes. So if I start that and then I come back and refresh, great, look at that, we have the about page. If we go to the contact, we have the contact page. If we go to the home page, we have the home page. But what if we go to one that is not registered? For example, dashboard. You can see we have the page was not found, and right here we have a 404 status code from our server telling us that it does not understand that request, right? So let's say the user came to the home page. He's going to see a 200, which is a green status code, which means everything was successful, and he can see our home page. But if he tries to visit something like the dashboard that does not exist, then he's going to see the page was not found. That's pretty cool, right? So we already have a way of handling our requests and responses from our basic server. That is awesome. So thank you so much for watching, and in the next lesson we're going to have some more fun.